Okay. Let's take a look at, let's see it. Hold on one second here. All right. Okay, let me take a look at, today we're going to take a look at Trafficked, the trailer.
America. What if I told you that Xavier Becerra was going to turn HHS into the child trafficking arm of the United States government? Would you believe me, or would you call me a conspiracy theorist?
Well, we had a whistleblower who came out and said this is the information that we have, that HHS is not vetting the families or the people that these children are going to.
No child in our custody is released to a sponsor without having gone through a full vetting.
A full vetting that you said, let's speed it up because Henry Ford could never have been rich and famous if he worked at the slow process you are. Children are not widgets on an assembly line. They are human beings.
He deliberately pushed for speed, and more speed because of the public relations problems that the administration was experiencing.
Get the kids out, run them through, get them out to those sponsors, those traffickers.
And then when we found that there were people on the transnational organized crime watch list who were actually sponsoring the children, the MS-13 related case, that's when things started to go a little bit haywire, because that's something that HHS did not want the general public to find out about.
All right, and then let's do a short clip on Tim Ballard, where the children, U.S. policies turned America into child trafficking capital of the world. Okay, let me go.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind.
Kamala, where are the children? Kamala, where are the children?
America. What if I told you that the United States federal government was running the largest child trafficking network in the history of the world?
The U.S. has become the middleman in a multi-billion-dollar migrant child trafficking operation at the border.
Experts have told us that these kids are being drugged with Rohypnol to prevent them from telling authorities that these are not my parents. That's why they drug these children, so that these children are able to get trafficked across the border.
And that's what happens when you have these soft immigration policies that are allowing people to come in droves.
Say you're a family, and we'll take your word for it.
Are you ashamed for what you've done to this country?
America. What if I told you that the United States Border Patrol agents would create a public-private partnership with Mexican cartels so they could traffic in unaccompanied alien children into America?
We have people in there that have been bought out, unfortunately. That's a reality.
Should Secretary Mayorkas be impeached, sir?
No, sir. No, sir. No, sir.
How can you say no when you know he's broken his oath?
The DHS under Mayorkas sent a memo out asking the Border Patrol agents to withhold information from the Office of Inspector General.
It's corrupt. It's corruption. And it all starts at the top.
America, what if I told you that this entire operation was the Democrat agenda and it was being bankrolled by Republicans? Would you believe me, or would you call me a conspiracy theorist?
We need more walls and more ports of entry.
So now we have a world-class security system at the border?
I would, in fact, make sure that we immediately surge to the border.
Got into a white van, ended up in New York City, being raped like a dozen times a day, between the ages of like 12, 13, up to like 16 or 17 when she escaped. Ended up testifying in court against her traffickers, had them all convicted, and then we helped with some of the aftercare. Oh, to God that there had been a wall and a port of entry. She said, I would have reached out. I would have screamed, help me. You know, these people are bad. And she would have been rescued. Of the little 6-year-old boy who was rescued, which is a true story, because his trafficker had taken him from Mexicali. And so he had to take his chances. That's what we want to do. We want to force the child traffickers to have to take the their chances at ports of entry. There's two cases in point that explain why we need border enforcement and why we need law. You're treating foreign children like crap in ways you would never treat U.S. kids. Under Trump's policy, you're actually treating foreign children in a way that you would treat American children. We did have rapid DNA technology at the borders. I've used it. It works. Within 10 minutes, 20 minutes, you can positively identify blood relationship. Biden, Kamala took the program away at the border and talked to women who come across and say, I was raped 10 times because I couldn't afford the fee, and the smugglers say, oh, don't worry, you can pay for it later. It's more difficult to adopt a cat from a shelter than it is to go down and claim sponsorship of a child and take possession of that child. And why do I call America the belly of the beast? Because we are the #1 consumers of child sexual exploitation material in the world, thus making us probably the highest demand for child sex in the world.
Wyoming man was sentenced to nearly 20 years in prison for possessing the largest cache of child pornography ever discovered in U.S. history.
So this is not a country you want to be lost in. And so I think she estimated that she was raped around 30,000 plus times over the course of her life between 13 and 16 when she rescued herself. But this is happening to hundreds of thousands of children. Like the importance of a port of entry. And it's so crazy how it got political. It's not a political question. Everybody does it. Disneyland does it. Universal Studios does it. Every concert hall does it. Now the president of Honduras is super socialist. The president at the time in Guatemala is super conservative. They didn't care. They said the exact same thing to me. It's not political. They said your open border policies are killing our children. Our children are being kidnapped. Our children are being taken. Our children are being lost. We have Kamala Harris to thank for politicizing what is otherwise a humane policy.
Around his vanity project called a wall.
Border enforcement is only humane policy. Non-border enforcement is absolutely inhumane. They know that their border policies are causing great suffering, the worst kind of suffering possible to children, but they're willing to turn a blind eye for political gain and whatever else. And the traffickers and the pedophiles love it. The article is what these traffickers are making. 14 million on the daily by trafficking these people and these children into the United States.
Once a child, if we don't rescue them at the port of entry, how much harder is it to locate a trafficked child once he's in and been given to the buyer?
Impossible. Less than a 1% chance.
Okay, so Broken Promises, Ryan Matta and Tim Ballard, coming soon, 12/12/24. All right, let's take a look at, let me see one more thing here. All right, let's look at what is treason trafficked for educational purposes.
America. What if I told you that the Biden administration was going to turn America into the child trafficking capital of the world? Would you believe me? Would you call me a conspiracy theorist?
We have people in the United States of America that breed children in order to sell them. And when they are sold, they come without birth certificates, which means it's easier to kill them and have no one ask where they are. We're also importing children by the plane load.
The taking of these children to the United States where the demand looks like it's enormous.
The Biden administration has reportedly been unable to make contact with 85,000 of these children. Think about that for a moment.
So we are the demand. If 85,000 children show up at our border and are released into that economy of pedophilia, what do you think's going on?
4 CPD officers accused of having sex with migrants.
These allegations are that, again, they engaged in sexual relationships with migrants, some were told, who may have been minors.
Even more disturbing, sources tell CBS 2 that a teenage migrant is now pregnant as a result of one of these alleged encounters.
Is it a conspiracy theory? Is child sex trafficking a conspiracy theory? It is most certainly not a conspiracy theory. It occurs far too much.
This child trafficking thing is real. It has always existed.
America. What if I told you that Alejandro Mayorkas was going to turn DHS into the human trafficking arm of the United States government? Would you believe me, or would you call me a conspiracy theorist?
We have rescinded so many Trump immigration policies, it would take so much time to list them.
You are failing miserably.
You changed Title 42. You allowed hundreds of thousands of migrant children to come across the border, and then you made it worse.
We have the Biden administration not even testing who these adults and these children are.
Not only did DNA testing going to end, about to end, the vetting of sponsors also ended at HHS under this administration. No more vetting, detailed, in-depth vetting of sponsors.
And get these kids out as soon as possible to sponsors who weren't vetted.
Little kids. No, they're sedated. They are sedated. Look at them. Look at them. This is the United States, and unfortunately, our law enforcement agencies are out here assisting and abetting in the child trafficking trade, guys.
Do you not care? Do you not have just an ounce of human compassion for what your open border policy, the type of human depredations it is causing? You just sit there looking with a blank look on your face.
America, what if I told you that Xavier Becerra was going to turn HHS into the child trafficking arm of the United States government? Would you believe me, or would you call me a conspiracy theorist?
Well, we had a whistleblower who came out and said this is the information that we have, that HHS is not vetting the families or the people that these children are going to.
No child in our custody is released to a sponsor without having gone through a full vetting.
A full vetting that you said, let's speed it up because Henry Ford could never have been rich and famous if he worked at the slow process you are. Children are not widgets on an assembly line. They are human beings.
He deliberately pushed for speed, and more speed because of the public relations problems that the administration was experiencing.
Get the kids out, run them through, get them out to those sponsors, those traffickers.
And then when we found that there were people on the transnational organized crime watch list who were actually sponsoring the children, the MS-13 related case, that's when things started to go a little bit haywire, because that's something that HHS did not want the general public to find out about.
Under Alejandro Mayorkas' watch, HHS has turned into the largest child trafficking network the world has ever seen. There are currently 438,573 migrant children missing in America. Then what if I told you the last time they would be seen alive is when HHS ordered the delivery of these children to sexual predators? Would you believe me, or would you call me a conspiracy theorist?
All of the child services agencies across the United States of America, they did not start out as organizations to prey on children, but they attract pedophiles, and ultimately pedophiles end up rising in the ranks and controlling those organizations, so that an organization that initially started out in the service of children becomes an organization that is in fact hunting children.
If they're going to allow children to declare their gender at age 3, they're not going to care if kids engage in sexual activity, frankly, or if kids engage in the workplace in jobs that are supposed to be done by adults. I think it's obvious. They just simply don't care.
This is an industrial system. It's an industrial system that uses small children to exploit for sex. Therefore, it has to have the cooperation agreement by institutions and people in power.
They are facilitating, Mayorkas has facilitated the biggest child smuggling and trafficking operation in American history.
I am calling on Congress to investigate the actions of DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, HHS Secretary Xavier Becerra, and Border Czar Vice President Kamala Harris, and to identify their role in facilitating the abuse of children through federal agencies and demand that they be held accountable.
The White House has tried to avoid calling what's happening at the border a crisis, but it is a big problem.
Agents across the southern border have told me they feel like they are the middlemen in the biggest human smuggling operation in the world.
The government, as well as the NGOs, who, by the way, are getting very rich off of this entire policy.
And they are willing to sacrifice these kids into a life of slavery if that serves their purpose to have an open border.
This is an international business of selling children.
This should be a national story. This is a crisis that the media just rejects.
I do want to get to this.
Our government is complicit in sex trafficking, sending little kids to sex trafficking.
And everybody should agree on that. That should be
unbelievable.
One man who refuses to stand by and just let it happen.
He brings an eyewitness in the trenches perspective of what's going on.
And is upsetting all the right people and saying what the agents and officers on the southern border need him to say.
And he outlines simple solutions to stop the invasion of millions of individuals across the globe from illegally entering America.
J.J. Carrell,
veteran of the Customs and Border Patrol,
co-host of Unrestricted Invasion,
and author of the best-selling book called Invaded.
Border Patrol agent from San Diego sector.
J.J. Carrell joins us now.
JJ, what is going on? Tell me what your thoughts are.
And who's ultimately pulling the strings?
Everything we thought is changed completely. This is beyond anything that I even could have imagined after 24 years. I saw the most well-oiled, well-funded, most efficient machine that I have ever witnessed in immigration, ever. The flow to the border was seamless. The processing was streamlined so much that they were bringing people in within minutes, getting them out. NGOs were sitting there waiting, because for each person we're going to give to the NGOs is thousands of dollars. What the hell did I just see? Who the hell did I just interview that told me X, Y, and Z, detention camps in America, child sex trafficking, people that are inside the belly of the beast with NGOs, and I'm stunned.
Please do not leave early. After the credits are finished, there will be a call to action on our website. Our website is thisistreason.com, where you can find over 35 full-length edited interviews from every source that we use to make this documentary. So when the fake news tries to discredit it and call it a conspiracy theory, you can direct them directly to our website, thisistreason.com. This documentary is rated R. Viewer discretion is advised.
If you don't have a wall system, we're not going to have a country. There's a lot of problems in Mexico. They have a lot of problems over there. And they have the cartels. And the cartels, we're fighting the cartels, and we're fighting them hard. But the fact is, if you don't have a wall system, it would be bedlam, I imagine.
Where the shift started taking place about 6 months, 7 months into the Biden administration, more money was coming in through the trafficking of human beings than was the drugs and even the weapons trafficking and the organ trafficking. And so everywhere I would go, I would start seeing more and more atrocities, more and more stories. Then you learn about the slaughterhouses that are in Mexico. These are literally warehouses that are set up strategically along the border where people are earmarked and they're plucked from homes or on the caravans and they're brought to these houses and they're literally killed for their organs. Eyes, hearts, livers, kidneys, and the bodies stack up. And then they're sold on the black market. And the stash houses where the sacrifices are taking place. The rape trees on the I call it the Mexican highway. And it's because they traipse up through Mexico in this rough terrain area. It's kind of back country. And they get to these staging grounds. And in these staging grounds, they could be high up on a hill. A couple of these places took my team sometimes an hour and a half to 2 hours just to hike up to them while they're being staged to wait, because the coyotes have phones, and then they call the buyers in the United States of America, and they're all over the United States. We have captured phones where we've had phone numbers where they just light up and we trace where these buyers are. And these communities, Chicago, New York, rural communities, where these individuals are earmarked to go, and then of course you have the transport that picks them up. But prior to that transport picking them up, there's shackles and ropes and chains, and they're on these trees, and they literally shackle women, children down, and they violently gang rape them. This isn't just one person, they're violently gang rape them into submission, and sometimes if they fight back, they'll take up stones or whatever and they'll bash their heads in, and we'll see the bones and the dead bodies left, the remnant. And then they're put in these transports, and then they're whisked away to wherever it is that they're sold in the most horrific conditions. And this is a war against good and evil.
Checkpoint 1, initial U.S. contact. When it comes to child trafficking, the second most dangerous part of the journey for the child trafficker is crossing the border with the merchandise. The initial U.S. contact happens when Mexican cartels deliver unaccompanied migrant children to Border Patrol agents. It's almost like these cartels have these agents on their payroll.
And when you talk about the cartels, I tell people this, the money, the differential between narcotic money and human smuggling, like just bringing people over, was so great. But now, dude, the money to bring people and children over is now come so close to the narcotics that the drug cartels are taking over all the human smuggling. That's how lucrative the human smuggling, because the volume has increased so much, and you are bringing people over from 7,000 to 10,000 miles away. So those smuggling fees jump to $50,000, $100,000. You do the math on that. And now the smugglers, once they get across the border onto American soil, they don't have to smuggle them.
Oh, they have the NGOs.
They have the NGOs. Yeah. They've just taken away 50 to 70% of the actual cost of smuggling people. And the U.S. government is the smuggler now.
Right, and so to be fair too now, because that is the more, I guess, enlightened brand of criminal, the drug cartels, the more sophisticated enterprise, I guess.
Yes.
So, okay, now that we've made more profit, do we go like waste it on like cocaine parties and boats, or get a better return on investment and you start then incorporating into American politics? That money now flows to where you'll increase that
That's
stability.
already been proven.
Exactly.
In California, in Texas, and a large majority of the sheriffs and the local politicians are in cartels are paid.
When the cartels run the operations, what that means is they control the lawfulness of activities. They control them all the way from the court system to law enforcement, in many cases, not all. I find some good sheriffs, and then down to the legislators, local, all the way to DC. Now, I'm a fact witness on what I see. I can speculate on DC, but I've seen enough for me to.
Do you believe the cartel has gotten in and owns sheriffs, law enforcement, and legislatures?
Absolutely. There are some that have gotten away with it that we know about.
How much money does it take to corrupt a Border Patrol officer?
I'm afraid Border Patrol agents or CBP officers, we find that some are willing to compromise their authorities and sell out their allegiance for remarkably small amounts of money.
Checkpoint 2, HHS intake facilities. This is the most dangerous part of the journey for child traffickers, the delivery of the child to a buyer in the United States. After Border Patrol processes the child, they then coordinate the delivery of the child to an HHS intake facility. Eventually, HHS will find the child a sponsor.
Once we vet the sponsor, the child then goes through the process of having a recommendation by the case manager, who's supposed to know the case the most intimately. And so then they get the decision from the case coordinator, that's a contractor employee that reviews the case and says, yes, yay or nay, I agree with the case manager's decision to release this child. And then it goes to the federal field specialist. The federal field specialist then agrees, yay or nay, to release the child based on the recommendation from the case manager and the case coordinator. And then at that point, it goes to transportation. And then transportation does a check with the sponsor, calls the sponsor and says, hey, who are you expecting? Are you expecting a child from whatever site? And so the sponsor will typically say yes, and give the name and the age of the child. And then at that point, they call transportation, which is typically Southwest Keys or MVM, that would transport the child off the facility. And then we never see them again, obviously. But even when they were doing the 30-day wellness checks, these kids were coming up missing.
Why are you hiding your name badge? Why are you so ashamed of what you're doing with these kids?
You don't have my permission to be taking any pictures.
This is a public-facing place. I've already talked to the police. These are little kids. How old are they?
Sir, all I can say is there's no comment.
Listen, I'm not trying to harass you. I'm just saying a lot of these kids could very well get trafficked across the country, and you know that. You know that. So I'm asking, could I know where they're going? Could I know where they're going?
No.
Checkpoint number 3, the placement of UACs. UAC stands for Unaccompanied Alien Child. These UACs are placed inside child migrant detention facilities. These facilities are ran by NGOs. NGO stands for non-governmental organization. These facilities are referred to as child migrant concentration camps. Here's the kicker, America. They're funded with your tax dollars.
So, first of all, Jewish Family Services is a fucking rocket, okay? It's like the Clintons, they splinter off. So they have Catholic Family Services, Jewish Family Services, all these different family services that have all these NGOs, but their parent company is all the same fucking person. And it's a non-governmental organization, but they're driving around in brand new fucking Benzes. They're getting brand new fucking charter buses to move these bodies from one place to another. You tell me what fucking non-government organization is hurting so bad for money that they have to buy new fucking vans and buses to shuttle these fucking people around. A Mercedes Transit van can cost upwards of $90,000 fully decked out. And these fuckers are pulling up to pick up fucking 2 or 3 bodies and then charging the government a hand over fucking fist. You were charging us to COVID test all these fucking bodies that were coming into their facility. And then the Hill, Congress is saying, hey, we have to stop calling these refugee centers because, optics. So FEMA came up with a fucking creative idea to call them respite centers because that's a little more humane. And so all of these different respite centers are popping up. And at the table was everybody. You had ICE, FEMA, CBP, so also Border Patrol, External Affairs, which deals with, it's like PIO, the big overarching PIO. And then you had Congressional Affairs, you had INA, which is International Affairs and stuff like that. Everybody was at the fucking table, and everyone's vying for their piece of the pie and saying, oh, we need this, we need this, we need this, oh, what's going on here, what's going on here, what are we doing to rectify this and stuff like this. And the answer was always, well, let's just move them over here. Let's just move them here. It's fucking smoke and mirrors, JJ. ICE is saying, oh, we have 500 fucking centers over here. Cool, we'll move these bodies over here. Now San Diego has 500 fucking bodies bodies. So we're just shuffling fucking shit from one place to another so the government can say, oh yeah, we're fucking filling this shit up left and right, and people are lining their fucking pockets.
Checkpoint number 4, transporting kidnapped children across state lines. With unlimited money coming from House Republicans and the protection of Senate Democrats, these NGOs have created an advanced network with the ability to deliver children to all 50 states in America. These children are trafficked across state lines on buses, rental cars, shuttle buses, private jets, and commercial airlines.
So commercial flights, the sponsors would have to meet us at baggage claim in the airports.
When you were flying commercial and you would meet them in the baggage claim, did those individuals that you gave those kids to, did they look like they came from very wealthy, maybe middle class neighborhoods that you dropped off?
No, never.
So why would you have to fly children through the middle of the night and drop them off in suburban homes, all in the cover of darkness or early morning?
Yeah.
How old are these kids?
At different ages. I would see them around 4, 5, all the way up to 17.
So you're flying around 200 to 300 children all over the United States of America in the middle of the night.
Yeah, correct.
Checkpoint number 5, sponsoring a child. Think about sponsoring a child like adopting a child in America, but without any safety rails to protect the children. The Office of Refugee Resettlement, which is under the Department of Health and Human Services, have created a website that gives anyone living in America the ability to sponsor an unaccompanied migrant child. Just complete a simple FRA application and you can receive a child in as little as 14 days. They have streamlined the process by destroying Trump's immigration policies, like DNA testing, essentially streamlining the process for child traffickers and pedophiles to exploit the system.
I remember when I got a message saying, we're not going to be allowed to check to see if this little girl really belongs to this guy. We're not going to be able to check whether these children really belong to these people. We're just told to process them together as a family and send them on their way. Stories about how a little girl got raped for a week because she had to pay for the parents to weigh in. Story about a girl, a wife, who got raped for a couple of weeks by the cartel because she's paying for their way in. And then the agent has to sit there and look at these women in the face, literally with their tears burnt into their face, and say, I gotta let you go with them. I gotta let you go.
This has led to an epidemic. Men and women on the International Terrorist Watch List are now exploiting the system on a weekly basis. They wanted this fact covered up so bad, DHS fired Aaron Stevenson when he came forward to Congress as a whistleblower with all the evidence.
I blew the whistle on DHS on like 3 different things.
So tell me what you blew the whistle on.
Came across official records of known watch-listed cartel members. We call them transnational organized criminals, which is layman term for everything. We'll call them cartel members. For the first time in this program, we saw that known cartel members were sponsoring these unaccompanied kids at the border.
Fargo police arrested this man, Enoch Bravo, and charged him with several crimes, including electronic solicitation of a child, traveling to meet a child for sex, and human trafficking. Argo's chief says this traffic stop prevented more harm from coming to that child. He can't go into details just yet, but says Bravo brought the child from Kentucky to Alabama for illegal sex acts. Bravo is on ICE hold because he is undocumented.
Checkpoint number 6, the final destination. Once HHS has ordered the delivery of a child to a sponsor, there's a 70% chance that child's going to disappear, vanishing without a trace. These missing children are presumed to be trafficked into various forms of exploitation, including sex trafficking, labor trafficking, organ harvesting, and satanic child sacrifice.
It's not just child slavery or child sex abuse, it's also child torture, because you have adrenalized blood. You have the whole blood drinking ceremony of the satanic world.
Whether it's a satanic church or it's a cult or it's a satanic church disguised as a Christian church, every organization, religious organization, has the opportunity to go sideways. It usually goes in that direction when you have bad deacons, bad pastors, allowing certain things to happen in the church. Maybe there's a pedophile, whatever it may be, and nobody confronts that pedophile. There's all kinds of reasons why it can go upside down. In the satanic world, one of the most precious things to God are children. And if you want to hurt the heart of God, and we know this because I've interviewed Satanists before, you go after their children. And so a sacrifice has to be made. That goes back to the days of the Bible with Moloch, Baal, I mean the list goes on and on and on. So traditionally, those sacrifices are part of the protocols of satanic ritual abuse. And sometimes there are families that's generational as well. Generally what we've heard and what we have evidence of, I'll just take one of the cases that we worked on. It took place in a basement of a church. The grandfather, who was the minister, who was also a Satanist, on the under the guise of the Christian church, okay, took his granddaughter down in the basement, and she was forced to sacrifice another child. Now she's got her hands bloody. And so after she did that, of course she's traumatized.
How did she sacrifice?
With a knife. Yeah, just with a knife, she said. Just piercing the heart with a knife. And after she did that, she was sexually abused on a regular basis by friends of her grandfather, including her grandfather. So what's interesting is she got older and she finally got out of the SRA community. I remember my director of human trafficking actually asked her the question, when you were being sexually abused by men, because I think by then she was like 22 when we finally rescued her. She said, what was that like for you? And she said, well, you know, it wasn't really that bad because that's what my grandfather, I was used to it because that's what my grandfather used to do to me. Come on.
What about stuff like the Catholic charities down there helping people assimilate into the United States? And we're not leaving them in Texas or Arizona. These people are being escorted, assisted in the most generous way to be peopling all sorts of different states around the country.
Yeah, I'll say this carefully, but I think it's the truth. I am myself Roman Catholic, and I will tell you that Catholic charities and all these groups that wrap themselves in religion are basically co-conspirators in human trafficking operations.
You might ask yourself, how is this possible? Well, unlike CPS, no one is coming to check on these children. The only wellness check these children receive is one phone call within the first 30 days of the child being delivered.
Why do you think our federal government has allowed that to happen?
I really just think that they don't want to lose their jobs. I really think they just want to keep their program running. It's all about the money, period. Whether it's money for civil servants who just want to keep their job and, you know, enjoy their gig, to the NGOs that are becoming wealthy off of the backs of these children. I mean, they are utterly disgusting because they know what's happening, these NGOs. They know that they're delivering these kids and they're not doing the proper vetting. They don't care about the safety of the children. They look at children as dollar signs, period. They sweep everything under the rug. They hush it. They keep it quiet because everyone involved in this really sick industry, they just want to keep it going and they just want to become wealthy. So I think there's never going to be proper oversight as long as this is a money-making machine. They don't want it to stop.
Thank you for your whistleblowing. It's courageous people like you that step forward under possible threat, okay, that allow the American public to actually see what's happening. So God bless you. Thank you, Ms. White.
My name is Deborah White, and I work for the General Services Administration, GSA, in Washington, D.C. So I came to answer the call in May of 2021. I answered the Biden administration's kind of all call to the executive government, just asking for volunteers to come and help with the undocumented children that were crossing the border. I got together with a team that was going to deploy to Pomona, California, where they had an emergency intake shelter for Health and Human Services Office of Refugee Resettlement.
Mrs. White, you testified that over 300 children had gone to just 2 homes and locations. You know, obviously speed over safety. This goes directly to this.
This needs to go into the hands of law enforcement agency, not Health and Human Services. They've proved over and over again for over a decade that they are not able, they're not capable to run this kind of program and deliver children safely. They're not even going to family members most of the time.
These children are funneled through a network of U.S. government agencies and contractors and non-governmental organizations. They have little or no training in how to protect children from trafficking and abuse.
But we took actions. I mean, we informed HSI, which is Homeland Security Investigative Division. We informed the Office of Inspector General. We informed up to the FBI. I mean, I made an FBI phone call. It didn't really go anywhere because...
What did all those phone calls do?
Nothing. There's been nothing done. From my perspective, there's been nothing done.
So you made calls about child sex trafficking or child trafficking,
yes.
Whatever that means. That entails a lot of things that are all evil.
Yes.
So child trafficking, and nobody came to you?
No. We had one call with the Office of Inspector General for Health and Human Services, so the HHS-OIG, had one phone call with us after I had discovered the first case of trafficking on the site, which was in Florida. And we were speaking with special agents at that point about just trying to get them the information that they needed, because HHS, they don't really comply. So we know this for a fact. When law enforcement reaches out to HHS, they do not comply. They will not give information. They will not give them access to the portal, which houses all the information.
And I get on the phone with a special agent and they're like, we don't have access to the portal. I'm like, what do you mean you don't have access to the portal? How do you have any oversight of the program?
When you talk about the portal, you called it a UC, but it's a UAC portal, unaccompanied alien child portal.
Yes.
So that's the tracking mechanism. Once the kids come in, they get inputted into that data. I'm sure they're already inputted in the Border Patrol data or whoever, ICE.
Yes.
Then it's in your portal, and then when they leave, you have them exiting your portal.
The records are still in the portal.
They're still in the portal, okay. And then that's what you use, that record, to make the phone calls and the follow-ups, if there ever is one.
Yeah, so there's a list. There's a list of children that we know that have been released. But because the case manager that they put in charge of doing these phone calls, because she was so distraught, and the case managers became distraught when they found out that they had released these children to sponsors that weren't really truly sponsors. I mean, they really were just they were just a middleman. They were handing the kids off to someone else.
People still do not believe it, but make no mistake about it. They have been stonewalling congressional oversight, and they are stonewalling the oversight of their own agency. HHS OIG has no ability to directly access and look at the case files of children who we suspected of being trafficked.
You would think that the Inspector General...
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
So the Inspector General, so the audience understands, they're like the federal version of Internal Affairs and local police department.
Yes.
And when you think of Internal Affairs and police department, they have access to everything.
Right.
So OIG, Office of Inspector General, in the Border Patrol, FBI, they have access to everything. When they come in and everyone knows, oh God, there's a case open against me by OIG, they're gonna dig and they're gonna dig and they're gonna find out. They're gonna literally pull all of my arrest data throughout my career. They're gonna have access to everything. So you're telling me that HHS would not allow them to have access to, or does not have access to, their UAC portal?
No, they don't.
But that's where all the information is.
Correct. That is the government system of record, the UAC portal,
Yes.
right? That is the official government system of record for these children. So we thought that our federal field specialist on site was making all of the recommendations. We had no idea until we looked at the census data that these decisions were actually being made by federal field specialists that have never even seen the child face to face. So there were federal field specialists that were approving cases online, completely online. Like they didn't even see the kid face to face. So we were very shocked at that revelation that, that federal field specialists from across the country, wherever they were, in the internet world, were just approving these cases.
People within our federal agencies, knowingly, willingly, malevolently, are allowing children just to get them out the door because they're overwhelmed through this open border policy.
And they can't handle the volume of people, correct?
Correct.
And so rather than allow the unaccompanied children to stack up and to create embarrassing pictures of children in cages and things of that nature at Border Patrol and other facilities, they simply released them to unvetted sponsors.
We had chaos. I mean, it was awful. And so what happened was in the command center, we had a morning meeting because we would meet in the command center for morning meetings. And they said, you guys don't need to worry about doing 30-day wellness calls anymore. We're not doing those anymore. Those have been moved to the national level. So the national call center is going to handle those calls from now on.
They didn't call anybody.
No.
As shocking as it may sound, it appears to me they just don't care.
Sadly, there are some people who care more about maintaining their contracts, maintaining their appearance of looking good, which is why HHS has lost control of their program. That's the bottom line, because they won't submit to transparency, accountability, and oversight.
Has anything changed from 2021?
Not that I know of. I don't work directly with them, any longer. But I know people, and they've told me that it is the same thing. Nothing has changed. They don't share information with law enforcement freely. They don't have to. They're not required to.
Why? Because this would cripple their program if law enforcement and the American people could really see the extent of the criminal behavior.
What was the ages of children coming into you?
So we had all ages, but very typically 15 to 17 years old.
Okay.
Yeah. That was the bulk majority of the kids were 15 to 17 years old.
I have seen these children, I have interviewed these children, and I have stories that will haunt me for the rest of my life.
I remember processing one of the children, and this is probably like one of the stories that it broke me. It broke me. You know, this young boy, Matteo. So he was 15, I believe he was 15 years old, and being interviewed by one of the case managers who said, I just need some help with this kid. Matteo said, the coyote brought me across the border, because we know, one of the digging deeper questions I would say is that if you need to get these kids to admit that they were trafficked, if they were, right, in some way, and you need to ask beyond, like, did you acquire a debt to get here? They're going to say no. Because they're trained on what to say. Finally got this boy to admit that a coyote did bring him over, because most of the kids will start out with like, oh, you know, I just, I came by myself. Like, we're like, no coyote, nobody helped you to cross, because, you know, typically nobody gets here. Nobody gets here unless you pay the cartel. Correct. Nobody gets here unless you have a guide. Like, correct. You know, and so eventually they'll admit they had a guide, and then we'll eventually get them to admit that they paid money, right? And they owe money, right? And that's how we get, you know, the confessions out of them. Anyhow, so through those digging deeper questions, you know, and through, you know, interviewing them and saying, we know you don't get here by yourself. Like, we know that the cartel will take you and kidnap you. So tell us how you really got here, and tell us if you owe money or not, right? And so eventually they'd say, yeah, okay, I do owe money. This little boy, this 15-year-old boy, one of the questions is like, I don't remember, like, how do you identify, you know, and sexual orientation, those kind of questions, right? And so he said, can I go back on one of my questions? We said, yeah, sure, you know, and he said, I don't think that I'm gay. He said, but my father's been, you know, selling me to men since I was 7. So, you know, it's very normal for me, you know, to notice men too. And the coyote that brought me over, he raped me the entire time. He said, but I didn't think it was rape because he told me he was going to pay me when we got to the border, but then he just never paid me. And the child said it just so nonchalantly, like it was so normal for him to be abused by men, and the part he was mad about was that he didn't get paid. That's the part he was mad about. And that just broke me to pieces. I mean, I think the piece that broke me was when he said that his father had been selling him since he was 7 years old. And I just remember, you know, in Pomona going into the bathroom and just trying to keep my sobbing quiet, you know, in my sleeve. And, you know, I'm like hitting the wall, you know, next to me. And I'm just like, God, where are you in this? Because these sick people don't care, but you care. And I'm like, where are you? And why aren't you doing anything? And I just remember, like, you know, sobbing and then coming to the realization that God's like, I did do something. I sent you. Yeah. And I came to that realization that I am there for a purpose. I am there for a reason. It was not for nothing that I showed up there not knowing what I was going to be doing, not fathoming that I was going to find trafficking, having no idea that it would bring me to this point at this moment where I have to speak out about what was happening, you know, whether people believe me or not. It is my duty by God to do what I'm doing and to speak out for those who are oppressed and cannot speak for themselves. These children have no voice. No one is coming for them. We have to do something. As Americans, we have to do something, you know, to save these children, because nobody else is coming for them. These systems, these institutions that I love, that I work for. I love my country. I love my government, but I love these children, right? As a Hispanic American, I am distraught that they are selling our children. They're selling them off, right? And casting them into the night without a care about what's really happening to them. There's no follow-up. There's no follow-up to make sure these children are okay. A 30-day phone call, what is that? That's nothing. And that's not even happening.
One thing you said that I absolutely believe is you said no one's coming for them because they don't exist. They don't exist. They exist in some UAC portal.
Right, that no one has access to.
And then if you went into that portal, what does that portal even do? I call someone. Well, I don't have that child anymore. It's not against the law. They ran away.
Yeah, that's what they'll say a lot of times too.
Yeah, there's no recourse, but that's by design.
Right.
You said HHS compartmentalizes everything. Well, why do they do that? Because now they're going to blame the NGOs.
The NGOs they're just following the money, and they're just doing, you know, they're using the cover of the agencies and these executives in the agencies. Well, we're just doing what they told us to do. You know, we're innocent. You know, we're following orders. It's the federal government directing us, we're following orders.
The NGOs are going to come back and blame the government, and then we go round and round and round, and then you have a congressional hearing, and then nothing gets done. When you understand what's happening to the children, it changes the whole game.
Between the ages of 12 and 17 years old in New York City, this little girl was raped, we guess, about 60,000 times before she was finally set free. And that's the fate of thousands of children.
It's not like I lost a kid and they're in Iowa instead of being in Nebraska. You lost a kid that was supposed to be in Nebraska, is in Iowa, and he or she are doing sexual favors, sexual acts for payment 5 to 10 times a day.
I think about a 16-year-old girl from Guatemala. I'll call her Carmen. Her sponsor claimed he was her older brother, but after Carmen was released from the Unaccompanied Children program to her sponsor in North Carolina, she appeared in a photo on his social media. He was touching her inappropriately. It was very clear her sponsor was not her brother. Later, Carmen appeared on her sponsor's social media again. This time, she was alone. She was all dolled up, her hair was styled, her makeup was done, and her shirt was unbuttoned. The ORR federal field specialist said Carmen looked drugged and that she was for sale. It was later discovered that Carmen's sponsor had other social media accounts containing child pornography. What keeps me up at night is wondering if Carmen is safe.
Children were sent to addresses that were abandoned houses or non-existent in some cases. In Michigan, a child was sent to an open field, even after we reported making a 911 call after hearing someone scream for help, yet the child was still sent.
I felt disgusted. That's not what I signed up for. I signed up to go help protect these children, not to help deliver them on the government's dime, because it's what it is at this point. It's taxpayer-funded slavery.
Ms. White, you talked about Cherokee Federal. That's one of the NGOs. Is that the primary one that's been contracted, subcontracted to do this work?
That was the prime contractor at the facility that I was at.
At the facility. Do we have others as well?
Yes.
So are they in cahoots with the human traffickers? I mean, are they part and parcel of the same organization funded by the American taxpayer? I mean, is that how bad this is? The American taxpayer literally funding the human trafficking operation?
I'd say follow the money. The grand jury had witness testimony from executives in these NGOs. They basically said, as long as the money is there, we're going to do whatever ORR says.
Mr. Becerra, the secretary, told the ORR director, that's you, right, that if she could not increase the number of discharges, he would find someone who could. Do you think that this is morally acceptable? Do you think that this is acceptable to run ORR like an assembly line and to release these children to traffickers?
We do not run ORR like an assembly line.
If Henry Ford had seen this in his plans, he would have never become famous and rich. This is not the way you do an assembly line. And kids aren't widgets, I get it. But we could do far better than this.
The safety and well-being of children is our top concern, and by
Plainly it is not your top concern, because you have managed to lose 85,000 of them.
Our next guest worked at New York's largest migrant hotel, the Row Hotel, and came forward after he saw drunk children.
Reporting a 10-year-old being drunk in her hotel room without her parents on site. Carlos, it's really great to have you on.
Talk to us about what you saw when you were working there.
You went and got employed by the NGOs at the child migrant centers.
Yeah, so
okay.
I work for a ton of NGOs. I did it for the Trump administration. I did it for the Biden administration.
So tell me what it was like under Trump.
People are like, well, Trump's separating families and this and that. And it's like, well, he's separating these people because they're not families.
Right.
They're kidnapped kids who are here against their will.
Well, that goes opposite of AOC and everyone else that said Trump was putting kids in cages.
People like AOC, they don't know what they're talking about. You don't know unless you work inside these places. And there was times where when we removed children where we wouldn't get called for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, sometimes a whole month we wouldn't get called.
Because we were shutting the border down.
Yeah, correct. Shutting the border down under President Trump, kids were not released in such a quick matter. The more kids that are coming into the country and being moved around, then I have more hours. If that's not happening, I'm not gonna get called, So
when Joe Biden came in office, how often were you working?
Oh man, the phone calls wouldn't stop.
We are waiting for records that show where the millions being spent on migrants is going.
Some records we did receive show employees working at migrant shelters have made more than $135 an hour.
These invoices obtained by NBC5 Investigates show employees of a private company, Favorite Staffing, which run the city's migrant shelters, have made at least $135 an hour, in some cases more. In one invoice, a facility manager made $14,000 in a week in December. Another invoice shows a nurse earned more than $20,000 in 1 week.
To see invoices like that are disgusting. They're outrageous, and they should be cause for an immediate investigation.
I'm looking at a man that said he was working a handful of days a month at $18 an hour, to the same man under Joe Biden, which is not 10 years later, like a year later after Trump leaves, and you're making $6,000, $7,000 a week.
Correct.
And you're working nonstop.
Correct, and that's not perks included. For example, when you fly commercial.
Right.
You fly United Airlines, you fly American, Delta. All those miles you keep. You would rack up 100,000 miles, 200,000 miles on each airline. So this is why escorts, that's what we would call ourselves, or they would call us, or transportation specialists would not want to speak out, because you're living a life that you're not supposed to be living. So even on the way to drop children off, a lot of us would ride first class.
Leaving when you
children.
say you're leaving the children, give me an age range of who type of child you're transporting.
Oh, they're babies. They're months old. The youngest I moved was 3 months old, a 3-month-old baby.
Would you have baby food with you?
No, none of that.
How did you feed the baby?
None of that. It was just the whole, like, hold the baby, try to make him calm down.
So you would take a 3-month-old baby and there would be no bottles or formula for the baby?
No, not.
So how long would you transport that? How long did it take you to transport that one baby, if you remember back?
Well, it's McAllen, so you know how it is. McAllen, you gotta fly to Dallas or Houston.
Yeah, it's no straight shots.
Yeah, no straight shots anywhere.
Okay, you know a baby needs to be fed probably every 4 to 6 hours. That's why women are exhausted, because they never sleep more than 3 hours at a time.
And the worry there was from the supervisors was a lot of these kids had pills that they needed to take. A lot of these kids the babies had formula, but a lot of the time the worry was, well, what if you do it wrong? Well, what if you give them the wrong thing and they die on you, or this happens, or
Okay,
that happens?
hold on a second, Carlos. I'm trying to wrap my brain around this. So you're a young bachelor man, never been married, right?
Yeah, never been married.
Have you ever taken care of a baby?
No. I have a niece, but I never...
You never fed a baby? You never changed a diaper?
No.
Okay, so they give you a 3-month-old. Do they give you a diaper bag?
No, they don't.
Okay, hold on.
They don't.
Hold on. You have to change a diaper multiple times a day.
Right.
So what happens if the baby urinates?
It was just give it to the sponsor that way.
Is it in a car seat?
No. So that's the other thing was.
It's just, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go on.
This is insane, guys. Check this out. Not worried about seat belts, not worried about anything else. They're all children. They're all children. Look at these kids coming out of this. Who's that little kid?
Y'all aren't gonna ticket them? That's illegal as fuck.
21 children just climbed out of this itty bitty. Are you kidding me? You feel morally okay with what you're doing to our own country, and you hide it with a whole bunch of kids. Where are these kids going?
As an escort, as a transportation specialist, when you show up to work and you would see on your itinerary, you have to go pick up at the Walmart in Raymondville, you have to go pick up at the facility in Los Fresnos, it would just ruin your day because you knew it meant a baby. And these two facilities, a former Walmart, sea of cribs, a lot of babies in there, a lot of toddlers in there. You just knew that if you were going to this facility, you were in for a very long day, you were in for a very sad day. Because how does a 3-month-old, how does a 2-year-old tell you that their aunt is in New York, that their aunt is in Florida? It's impossible. Because this child is an unaccompanied minor. There's no parent with them at the southern border. So how did this 3-month-old know how to tell the federal government, my aunt is in New York?
So how did that work out? So who brought him across the border?
And we wouldn't know. We wouldn't. The only times we didn't know was when the kid was old enough to tell us.
Basically instructions on where he wants to go.
Ese es tu padre? See? So he's got a cell phone, address. Looks like Louisiana. That's where he's supposed to go to.
But a 3-month-old is just like, what the hell happened there?
A 3-month-old can't even crawl.
Yeah.
So somebody had to have sold their child to get pushed across the border. They probably put a note or something on the child's blanket or something.
Powerful yet heartbreaking scene playing out on the U.S.-Mexico border right now. Take a look at this. Border Patrol agents found a 2-month-old baby abandoned in Rio Grande City. Officials posting this photo online, calling it a chilling reminder of how children are being exploited by human smugglers and criminal organizations each and every day.
According to the sector chief, Gloria Chavez, agents that responded actually rendered medical aid to this little vulnerable 2-month-old child. The baby is now in the custody of HHS. That's the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
When unaccompanied minors arrive at the U.S. at the border, they're taken into federal custody and then transferred to providers like Southwest Key, who give shelter and care for these kids.
Massive investigation into Southwest Key, the allegations of sex crimes against undocumented migrant children and intimidating them not to report it. A large portion of what's been investigated centers around facilities right here in the Rio Grande Valley.
They have no idea what that place is.
Yeah.
Criminal activity, pedophilia, all kinds of shit is going on in there. If I walk in there, they're gonna call the cops. I'm a private property. They're gonna arrest me. There's nothing I can do. But I know there's child molestation and rape going on in there. I've talked to the people that have worked in this one.
So you go into those 2 former super Walmarts and you go in, describe to the audience what it looks like and sounds like and feels like in a place that has cribs. How many cribs do they have?
Oh man, like I said, it's a sea of cribs.
Like, what would you guess?
I would say 60 to 80 cribs maybe. And sometimes they would be all full, sometimes they wouldn't. But it was just a horrible thing to see.
What would it sound like?
Just a lot of crying, a lot of yelling. A lot of these kids in these facilities don't want to be there. They've asked, can I be deported? And the federal government, OR, says, you're under federal custody. You're not allowed to leave until we give you a sponsor. So there's kids in these Walmarts begging to go back to Central America, to South America, and the federal government says no.
How many people you think were managing that facility?
I knew people who worked inside that facility, and they said it was maybe about 100 people on staff per shift. So they had 3 shifts. Had a morning shift, a mid shift, and a graveyard shift.
And what ages were those children in that facility?
They were 13 to 17, I believe.
So you have highly sexualized children in their teens, and you have 100 people watching 3,000 teenagers.
The Department of Justice alleges some employees, even supervisors, have engaged in rape, unwanted touching, and the solicitation of sex and nude images of those children since at least 2015, with some victims as young as 5. In one instance out of El Paso, an 8-year-old reported a youth care worker, quote, repeatedly entered their bedroom in the middle of the night to touch their private area, and he threatened to kill their families if they disclosed the abuse.
And this facility is another one that you can look up. San Antonio Convention Center, Governor Greg Abbott showed up himself. He showed up with Texas Rangers to shut it down because they were getting phone calls that staff members were sleeping with the kids, that staff members were running away with the kids, that kids were running away from this facility.
Children at this facility are being sexually assaulted. There are not enough staff to safely supervise the children at this facility. Some children in this facility are not eating throughout the day. These problems are a byproduct of President Biden's open border policies. To end this abuse, the Biden administration must immediately shut down this facility.
How many holding facilities, big, small, in between, are in Texas?
It could be anywhere from 100 to 300, somewhere around there.
In Texas alone?
Texas alone.
How many in the nation?
Anywhere from 400 to 600 facilities around the nation.
So they have transportation hubs, if you will. Is that correct?
Correct, but these facilities are small scale, as in like they're nowhere near as massive as Carrizo and Pecos.
So what we're looking at right here is my drone's going up. We're
going over here to see if we can't film this camp. And you're gonna see it, it's massive. Look at how big this place is. And they got it all gated off. They are grading this out to expand this facility. Look at how many more camps do you think they're gonna fit there? What else would be perfectly graded like that? Look at those quarantine camps for children. How many children do you think are in there? This is mixed boys and girls, 13 to 17. Carlos, I mean, there is way more. This is one of the biggest camps I've ever saw.
And the interesting part out of all this was that they finally built a new facility the size of Pecos and Carrizo, and it's in Greensboro, North Carolina.
That facility is under contract with the government to become an immigrant facility serving children ages 13 to 17.
5-year government contract would allow this facility to house up to 800 migrant children.
These NGOs are getting funding directly from the State Department, USAID, Homeland Security, 20 other government agencies, most likely. Probably no one knows who's getting multiple U.S. government grants all at the same time. The problem is that these organizations are encouraging and abetting illegal immigration into our country.
Your taxpayer dollars are putting that kid on a plane, train, automobile, whatever it is, and shipping that child to the sponsor given by a child trafficker in Mexico, and the United States government is therefore complicit. The United States government is fulfilling and completing the final leg of a child trafficking experience. That's our country right now.
And when you would do these trips, get off these planes and get on a rental car or get on a charter bus, you would go into suburban homes and drop these children off. So you would go up to the door, knock, and you would see like an Asian mother or a white mother about to receive 2 kids from Ecuador, 1 kid from Honduras, and all these different nationality kids were going in there. It was really weird. Why at this hour? Why in a suburban home? Why are these kids not matching with this person? These trips would happen through private airfield. That's the other thing, is why are they happening in private airfield? Why are you moving 200 to 300 kids at once?
It sounds as if you're dropping off children to somebody that ordered them off of Amazon.
Why is the administration flying thousands of migrants from the border in the middle of the night?
Well, I'm not sure that it's in the middle of the night.
4:29 a.m.
In recent weeks, unaccompanied children passed through the Westchester Airport to be unified with their parents.
White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki responding to the New York Post report exposing the secret flights bringing thousands of unaccompanied migrant kids from the southern border to suburban New York areas in the dead of the night. Tom, you say Joe Biden is not using DNA to match these individuals with relatives. How do they know who to place these individuals with if they're not matching them with relatives? Are they just guessing?
The people in the home where the child was going to, they all used to have to get background checks done inside the home. Under the current administration, no one has to get a background check done inside the home.
You have no idea who you're giving the kid to?
Yeah, who you're giving the kid to.
Where are you guys taking this kid? Is this your kid here? Sir, is this your kid? Hey, are these your kids, sir? Everything okay, sir? ¿Cuántos años? It's okay, it's okay. Amigo. ¿Cuántos años? ¿Qué país? Hey, are these your kids? No?
When you drop these kids off to people that look completely different than what their mom and dad, aunt and uncle should look like, what was your thought? What was your belief?
When I got into this line of work, I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought, we're doing a beautiful thing. We're reuniting kids with their family, and you're in that moment. And sometimes when people hear me talk, some people will say, there's no way this is true. He's embellishing. He's probably saying the truth, but he's lying a little bit to make it dramatic. That was my reactions when I would come across certain situations, was, how is this happening in front of me, It's just, you don't know what to do. And there are certain situations that I wish I never was a part of.
Like what? Give me an example.
There was a kid who was crying, saying, I don't know the sponsor. I don't know where you're taking me to. I don't want to go there. Please do not take me there. And my reaction was, well, we have to call back to the office and say what this kid is saying. But the person, my partner, who had seniority over me, did not want to do that. They would say things like, oh, the kid's just doing it for attention. They're lying. They know where they're going. Don't believe it. Basically calling the kid a liar. It was just a horrible thing. Just this kid who was crying, and then you drop him off with the sponsor who was not happy, who did not look excited. You would think, you know, a sponsor is, oh, I'm seeing my kid, my niece. It's a great moment. This sponsor was not any type of excited.
Was it a boy or a girl?
It was a girl.
Was she a toddler? Was she a preteen?
A preteen.
You turned her over to a man?
To a man. It's one of those where I just wish I could take it back. I wish I could have done more. But that was one of those moments where I finally started telling myself, I don't think you can fix this. It's out of control. And if you stay here any longer, you're part of the problem, part of this trafficking ring. A lot of people don't like to say it, but it is, because you're moving children. And every corner, whether it's Texas, California, now New York, there's children who are being harmed because of the immigration crisis.
Last night, we showed you exclusive video of a plane filled with migrants being left at Orange County Airport in Montgomery, New York. No one knew they were coming. The local police were unprepared. Biden was clearly trying to sneak them in. But this is nothing new for the Biden team. I mean, they do this all the time. Late Friday evening, police pulled over one of the buses leaving the airport, and the bus was carrying 50 teens from Guatemala and Venezuela. Migrants, mostly teenage girls. The plane came from Texas, but nobody really knew where they were headed. Police then boarded the bus to find out what the hell was going on. And Primetime spent the last 24 hours investigating the situation, and there is a web of human trafficking in play, sanctioned by the U.S. government with a lot of money changing hands. The group moving these migrants is known as MVM Inc. They're one of several NGOs that contract with the feds to transport unaccompanied migrant kids across the country through the sponsor process. And it looks like moving migrants is good business. MVM signed a deal with Homeland Security for $136 million last year. So it's our tax dollars that are funding the human trafficking.
There's different companies who move children around. There's certain companies who handle their own kids and they'll move them around the country. But there's one company that all they do is move children.
What company is that?
Which is the one I work for. Mary Victor Mike, MVM Inc. And it was founded by 3 former Secret Service agents.
So they have access to government contracts?
These contracts are massive. I know one contract in 2021, I think for around $190 million for 3 months of work. And when you look up the company, they have contracts with FBI, they have contracts with CIA, they've had a lot of contracts, and they've had a lot of drama where they ran the prison system for prisoners in Iraq. MVM Inc. was building the prisons and also hiring the guards, the security, the armed guards at these prisons for MVM employees.
And then they segued from that to child services?
To children.
And then they hired people that were unqualified to babysit and move children.
Right.
So you worked at the Row Hotel, where several legal migrants are housed there. Can you tell our viewers what you saw, what you and what other workers have seen?
So the Row Hotel is 28 floors. 28 floors full of migrants. All the way up to the 28th floor, you have migrants up there.
So it holds about 5,000 people.
When I was there, it was 5,000 people.
So 2 and 3 supervisors were handling 5,000 residents?
In the afternoon shift, from 2 to 10:30.
Were you ever trained in rape?
No.
Investigation?
No.
Were you or anyone else ever trained in rape counseling?
No. Well, I can only speak on the company that I represented there. So the issue with the Row and a lot of these hotels is they have a company in there who handles vaccinations. They have a company in there who handles the medical issues. They have a company in there who handles the laundry for the migrants. They get their laundry services done. They have a company in there for every little thing. So when I was a part of the management team there was 8 to 9 different companies that had to work together. So there was a lot of miscommunications, chaos, even on the management end for each company. So when a rape would happen, my superiors would say, let the company who handles the medical issues at the hotel figure it out. Do not call NYPD.
So someone rape a woman, the woman would be brutally raped, and nothing would happen?
Nothing would happen. Let the medical company that was hired by New York City handle it. Do not call NYPD. If you call NYPD, we're gonna lose the contract, and we're gonna get kicked out of the hotel, and a new company's gonna come in and take over. That was one of the main issues that I had while I was working at the road. You know, who can work like that? There's rapes happening and you're telling me, don't call NYPD, what the hell is that?
So tell us about this child that you found. Is that the 10-year-old who was found intoxicated? Is this a regular thing that you see children by themselves without their parents in these hotel rooms?
It's an everyday thing. Every day we find about 10 kids alone in their hotel rooms, either drinking or doing drugs. Weapons will be in the room, but we're not allowed to go in there. We're not allowed to take anything from them. It's basically a free-for-all in this hotel.
Yeah.
What do you think the overarching reason why all this is happening? What is the big reason why we are allowing so many unaccompanied children into our country, processing them the way we are, and then losing them into America? Why?
People save the money. So these companies are making all types of money for each child that they care for. But you know, at one point, it's not about the money. There's something evil behind it. Sex trafficking, organ harvesting. Some people hate to bring up the organ harvesting, but what else is going on?
And child sacrifice.
There's MS-13 members all over the East Coast who are accepting children who are being sent there.
There was a brave whistleblower at DHS. We confirmed that what he blew the whistle on was absolutely true. And we had an MS-13 affiliated sponsor trying to get 2 children.
So you blew the whistle on DHS. You told us about some violent criminals obtaining work visas, applying to sponsor unaccompanied minor children. Are you willing to go public?
I am. October 2021, I go public with the video, right? And they were like, oh, you were the source? Like, bye. But they didn't ask me any questions. They didn't debrief me. They didn't go like, okay, yeah, by the way, like, you're totally not doing this ever again because we don't trust you anymore. But like, how did you find this? Like, what were the indicators and warnings? Like, we're not seeing that. We have no reporting showing this. What the hell happened? Like, there was no curiosity at all. And again, people were told of me, don't talk to him. So it's like.
So they knew.
Well, they knew, but it's like, why aren't you gonna at least try to address it? Like, try to figure it out. So I asked this question, by the way, to Carlos, Tara, Debbie, Myra. Like, so when you guys got like fired, removed, whatever, like, did they debrief you? Did they like go on a fact-finding mission of like, you know, what led you to this? Are they going to address the situation and try to solve it? No. They were like, no, of course not. Like, everything happened where it's like, not so much like they're trying to cover it up, but just didn't care. Like, whoa, no, done. And it's like, there's a problem though, guys, but they're not trying to solve the problem.
You have people applying for children who we know are members of transnational criminal organizations.
This has never happened before. We've never seen an alien on the talk watch list trying to get a child. And now I've seen one from El Salvador, one from Romania, and one from Honduras. And they were an 18th Street gang, MS-13, and a Romanian crime group. It's 3 different gangs from 3 different countries, and they've never done this before.
I myself put in more than 20 cases of suspected trafficking, and I just started right in June of reporting, and I see in August his disclosure, and miraculously the story gets to me and the team. And I will never forget the moment of watching him say and show pictures of gang members who were sponsoring these children that I'm seeing in front of me.
So Tara and I became really good friends, met Debbie, met Myra, met Carlos Soriano, who's another whistleblower.
Yep.
So again, like, I'm looking at bad guys and I can see trafficking. These 3 women are with kids, they can see trafficking. And Carlos is like the final leg of this thing where he's like transporting the kids to destination. And he's like, yeah, dude, this is totally trafficking. And then it was in October of 2023, a friend of ours in the legal world sent us an email saying like, hey, did you guys see this rule change that HHS is trying to do? And we're like, No, like send it to us, right? And this is the big one. This is the foundational rule change to where they're going to essentially codify into law all of those field guidances. So like all the policies that they created, like the waivers and background checks, the timeframes of this, the weight, all the conditions that led to all the trafficking, they were going to just mark it approved as like, yep, this is it. This will become law now. So now to change that, that's not just field guidance anymore. You have to like change law to do this. And so it's just like a 300-page document. We read through it, and it's just, that's when we realize like, holy crap, this thing's gonna like solidify the program. Like this is really not good.
The Department of Health and Human Services, under Secretary Becerra, has published and codified a rule change to the unaccompanied minor program that legalizes the practice of child trafficking by the United States government, paid for with your tax dollars. What it does as well, Dave, it removes law enforcement from the equation. So if you're a federal employee and you are a caseworker, for example, you've got a kid that just crossed the border illegally, they've been raped so many times, that 12-year-old boy in diapers, because he's been raped so many times, that's an actual case that Tara Rodas dealt with. And you can now no longer call law enforcement to assist with this child and try to get justice, because they've created an ombudsman position. You have to go through that bureaucracy in the Department of Health and Human Services. There's no external oversight. And now they have also, in this rule change, published multiple ways to target and punish anyone who tries to blow the whistle. So they're subverting Congress' authority to make laws.
There's definitely human involvement somewhere making the decisions of, we're not going to audit, we're not going to investigate, we're not going to clarify, we're not going to do, and that number, by the way, 85,000, that number is about a year and a half old now.
No,
So it's
I
like,
laughed when they said 85,000 the first time. I laughed.
Yeah.
I said, come on. This is what these bastards are admitting to. You can only imagine what the real number is.
Right. We're also not the first whistleblowers on this thing. Like, this has been going on since at least 2014. They've been kind of quiet then, right? But as of 2021, like August, we know that there's trafficking now. As of Tara in 2022, we know it's huge. Her testimony in 2023. So it's like, guys, this is no longer like silence in the ears, and this is not like a thing where it's like, it's, oh, this is the echo chamber of Twitter. No one outside of Twitter hears about this. It's like, no, like this is the news.
Just days ago in Carrell County, Texas, authorities busted a smuggling operation involving an MS-13 gang member living illegally in Houston, Texas. And in Webb County, Texas, another smuggler recently led officers on a high-speed chase. The smuggler drove on the wrong side of the road before eventually abandoning the vehicle, attempting to run. This is coming at a time when we continue to report here, Natasha, that criminal enterprises shifting their focus more on human smuggling.
And it is common knowledge that human trafficking destination A is the United States. It's basically common word of mouth around the world at the moment for sex traffic rings that you want to move children into the United States, because the Biden administration, Jesse, has declared us open for trafficking business.
When they decided to do this, they had to be very strategic and intentional about it. Meaning when they had these roundtable meetings about, we agree we're going to use illegal immigration as the change agent to fundamentally transform America. What are the negatives? Like what is going to spring up that we need to be aware of? There had to have been a conversation of, okay, historically we are seeing child trafficking, we're seeing drug trafficking, we're seeing X, Y, and Z percentage-wise per the total amount of people. So if we bring in, like we think, millions of people, then the percentages will increase. So you're gonna have exponential drug overdose deaths, you're gonna have exponential increase in child sex trafficking, unaccompanied alien children coming across, on and on and on. They had to agree to this collateral damage and said move forward. They had to.
No, I agree with that, because again, they're not dumb people. Like, they understand data. They understand, like, they can see the issues, definitely.
They know the game, which is they're loyal soldiers. It doesn't matter how evil or corrupt and bad things they do. If they just keep playing the game,
they'll be rewarded.
Whether they get impeached and removed or whether they just leave, they will be taken care of forever. Mayorkas was somebody who knows how the department operates, and he knows right from wrong. And on day one, he came in and started doing wrong and never looked back.
I'm a strong believer that the evil arm of the federal government in this market, moving bodies and child sex trafficking, are the NGOs.
Yeah.
They are cloaked in religion and God, and they are the most evil organizations.
Hayes publicly congratulated Secretary Mayorkas for his appointment, specifically noting that he was a primary architect of the DACA program.
Immigration is an enterprise for these orgs who are incentivized by our open border. Over 80% of these organizations are funded by government grants. These grants pay for big salaries, immigrants' travel, food and lodging, plus their legal services. At the top is the United Nations, who is funding international migration, partnering with Hayes, who partners with our local NGO, Jewish Family Service.
I'm here with a CBP officer, and we're going to talk specifically about your time in Washington, D.C., in DHS headquarters, and dealing with NGOs, the non-governmental organizations. How long you were up there, more or less?
Over a year.
How much money in checks do you think that you cut in terms of for NGOs?
Well over $1 billion. Well over $1 billion.
Was there anyone else that was the check cutter?
Oh, logistics.
So there was more people cutting checks?
100%.
So what would you say, if you had to guess, how much over that year was spent on NGOs? Would it be billions with an S?
If you count up all of the different streams of income, the different buckets that they came from, yes, I'd say billions with an S.
In 1 year?
In 1 year.
And you're saying the major payee that you cut checks to is Jewish Family Services?
Jewish Family Services?
And their
well, the parent company, yeah.
Parent company?
Parent company, yeah.
And now I am seeing hundreds of mom and pops.
They're all splitting off of the same thing now.
They're the same payee, just a different name.
Correct, just a different name. Once you have the media looking into one organization, all of a sudden two more pop up, working with the same person.
Same payee.
Pretty much. They're all working with the exact same person.
Do we know that the org chart of that Jewish Family Services?
I believe Jewish Family Services is the parent company for everything. I can't remember specifically who the director is of Jewish Family Services, but...
Were you making payments to that Jewish Family Services? Was that your main person, or did you cut checks to Catholic Charities?
Sure, the checks were just cashed, or the checks were just approved to pay the non-governmental organizations. FEMA took care of the rest. We would all go to the table, and everyone would talk and discuss the needs. And there'd be, if there was objections, people would object and say, well, hold on, we need this over here, we need this over here.
So FEMA would make the payments to the NGOs?
FEMA had, so a lot of that money that got allocated, redirected to the NGOs was for national disasters. National disasters like hurricanes, tornado relief funds, wildfire, stuff like that.
So Americans in Hawaii were just suffering, while illegal aliens were housed in hotels. At the exact same time that the Hawaiians lost everything, they were given $700. Illegal aliens were getting in one day $700 worth of housing, medical, food, clothes. You're telling me for money that should have gone to American citizens were rediverted through FEMA to pay NGOs exorbitant contracts to cover everything that is needed for illegal aliens?
Yes.
Well, what do you think about the Guatemalan government suing Texas, saying that their children are being kidnapped and being trafficked in Texas through one NGO called Save the Children?
Who's on the board of Save the Children?
Jill Biden. She's not on it now. She was on the board. And then when the lawsuits came out, Joe Biden did the exact same thing he did to Ukraine. He had Blinken go down there and say, I want those two people fired.
What reasons could the Biden administration possibly have for wanting to silence the Attorney General of Guatemala? Have either the Attorney General or the Secretary General done anything in recent months that might upset high-level figures in the Biden administration? Let's see. Just days ago, as part of an ongoing investigation, Guatemalan authorities raided the office of an international nonprofit called Save the Children. This is an extremely well-connected and well-funded organization. It's been operating in Guatemala for decades. In fact, the president's wife, Jill Biden, recently served as chair of the board. The purpose of this raid could not have been more serious. Guatemalan authorities say the raid concerns the, quote, treatment of Guatemalan children in Texas. And according to the letter from Guatemala's public ministry, there's a possibility that NGOs like Save the Children may be involved in child trafficking operations. The letter names several other NGOs as potentially involved in some way in these operations as well. Of course, if there's any truth to this allegation whatsoever, it is the single largest untold scandal of the Biden administration. It would mean that an organization tied to the Biden family, one that was supposed to combat human trafficking, has been enabling it. But predictably, no mainstream media organizations have looked into this.
Real soon, I don't know how soon, but soon enough, there's going to be investigations into this, and we are going to recoil at the horror that we have created. We have 500,000 kids lost UACs. People are telling me at least that many U.S. citizen children are lost. How in God's name do you lose 1 million kids? Do you know how hard it is to lose 1 million kids?
Statistically, it's improbable. Like you can't lose. Like, it'd be one thing to lose like a couple hundred, or like bad record keeping of like maybe 1,000 kids or whatever. 10,000 would be a cause for like, holy shit, like there's something going on there.
Stop everything.
Right.
We got to look at this.
When you get into that exponential growth up to 1 million, it's like, yeah, clearly this is not a lost thing. This is purposeful. Can I ask you a question? Can I ask you a question? Because you've obviously, you've done a few things, right? Have you been told, specifically on this topic, by like, I'm not gonna name a network, but any network as a whole, writ large, where it's like, ooh, that's just kind of actually a very uncomfortable topic. We don't want to really get into that one. Ooh, that's kind of too blackpilling. Ooh, that's kind of like, that's too heavy for our brand. Have you heard that? Because we've heard that a lot.
I've heard that.
And it, it's kind of...
I've heard that, but you know what I do is, I say, oh, okay. And then right when we go in, I go, hey, let's talk about the sex challenge. And they're like, what? And I go, oh yeah, let me tell you what it's like to be 5 years old and be anally penetrated 15 times in a day. And they're like, oh my God. And I'm like, I don't really care anymore
because we now have so many unaccompanied and unaccounted for minors, and because the pedophiles in America know it, it's going to become a feeding frenzy, unlike anything we've ever seen in America. They're not going to have to scrap for brown-eyed, brunette, Hispanic girl anymore. She's going to be out there. Somewhere she's out there, and they're just going to get her, and nobody's going to stop them. And the guy that wants to purchase 5 African kids, and keep them in his basement, he's going to get that because they're more unaccompanied. The supply has increased, and the supply is unaccounted for. The demand, the appetite for child sex trafficking, is just going to flourish. It's going to continue.
Over 400,000 kids disappear from the United States every year. That's almost 2,000 a day. Some are abducted, some are parental abductions, some are kidnappings, some go into child pornography and trafficking, others go into slave markets overseas. Everyone has a job. My job is to bring them home.
My name is Basil Boz, and I am the founder of the Association for the Recovery of Children. The organization is a 501c3 nonprofit organization of former intelligence, military, and law enforcement officers that are dedicated to the recovery of missing, exploited, and sex trafficked American children. So generally, once all law enforcement at the local, state, and federal levels has been exhausted, or they choose not to get involved, we'll engage in the operation. We do this at no cost to the custodial guardian and with no paycheck in our pocket. We are one of the oldest running child rescue organizations in America, started in 1993. And we're blessed to have a 100% success rate in that every kid we've gone after, we've brought home. So,
how many American children do you think are in this web of evil?
I would say in excess of 400,000 in America. And those numbers fluctuate. We try to do our best. We go to independent organizations to get the actual numbers, because if you go to like Department of State or something, they're still posting the same numbers they posted last year and the year before and the year before. So they're not paying attention to it. They just think if I post something, America goes, oh, you guys are doing something about it. It's kind of like, remember when we used to put the picture on the milk carton of the missing kid, and people would look at the milk carton and they thought they were doing something about it because they looked at the milk carton. And you felt good that you looked at the milk carton and saw the picture. But at the end of the week, what happened with the milk carton? It went in the garbage. Did that kid come home? No. But we made America feel good, and we made you feel good while you were eating your cereal because you thought you were doing something about it. The reality, JJ, is that a kid doesn't come home until there are boots on the ground that physically go out and find that kid and get your hands on it and bring them home.
Explain to me how 400,000 American children and equivalent 400 to 500,000 UACs, how do 1 million children disappear?
That's exactly right. How do they disappear? Well, if I were going to, speaking from my experience, and a lot of times you have to think like the bad guys in order to know what the bad guys are doing. I would make sure that a long time ago we had set up holding tanks. It's just a term we use, holding tanks. Whether that's underground, whether that's individuals being paid to keep kids in a warehouse in their basements, whether they're being moved by trucks from one place to another. We don't see all those kids walking on the streets of America. We really don't. I mean, if you were to see, I don't know, let's say you saw 15,000 kids walking in the streets of Atlanta, just children. Somebody would take notice.
Yeah.
Right, but we don't see them. Okay, so we know that the kids came into America. We know they're there. We know they're here. We know they're unaccounted for, so let's just use some common sense. How do we hide kids? You gotta hide them somewhere. Where's the somewhere? What hotels? What underground facilities? What in America? How can you hide kids? We know you can hide kids in basements, but you have to pay somebody to do it. So that's a really great question, and it's something most NGOs, non-government organizations, or at least the 5 that we work with, are always wondering, and this is what our prayer is these days. Our prayer isn't that we need to be brave to go. We'll go. The prayer is, God, lift the veil so we know where they are.
If I mention child organ harvesting, I get immediate pushback that that's conspiratorial. What do you say to that?
It's not conspiratorial. Just like the very first time 30 years ago when I said there's a thing called child sex trafficking, and people pushed back at me and said there's no such thing as a conspiracy. No one would do that to children. Even my law enforcement partners said, nope, they're all just runaways. What you're asking is not a conspiracy. There is organ harvesting, and it brings a lot of money. It brings a lot of money. So back to your question earlier, where could all these children be disappearing to? Is it possible that they could be taken someplace and their organs harvested? Yes, it's possible.
Are you seeing it?
Yes, and we can't discuss in this interview how we're seeing it, where we're seeing it, because that we'd be divulging sources and methods. But yes, we are, and a lot of 3-letter agencies are seeing it as well.
It's that prevalent?
It's getting more prevalent, actually, because it brings money.
What are we looking at dollar-wise?
It depends on where on the black market you're picking those various organs up at. China may be selling them for a different price. South America, and it's interesting, is that this organ harvesting process isn't like, and we just got some intel from South America, a former cartel member, and he was really straightforward with us. He goes, I know people that are aware of organ harvesting think they have this picture that it's not that bad because the kid is taken to a hospital that's maybe on the payoff, and they need a kidney, so they do surgery on the kid and they sew him back up and he's off on his way, like that. He goes, it doesn't happen like that. He goes, most of the time it's happening in a barn. It's happening in a house, a stash house, someplace where they zipper the kid and they take what organs they want and the kid dies. He goes, that's how it's mostly happening. The organ goes in a box, an ice chest, whatever it may be, and then it's taken all the way up the line and sold. Who needs organs? Hospitals need organs. If you had a daughter and she was on dialysis and she needed a kidney or kidneys, and they said, well, JJ, it's gonna be a 3-year wait, and we're not sure your daughter can last 3 years. Would you pay? You probably would, because it's your daughter. Could somebody come to the hospital from the administrative side and go, JJ, we have this interesting case here. There is the possibility that we can get a kidney for your daughter this week and do surgery. It's a little unconventional and it's going to cost you $30,000 more, but we can get it. Private donor. Would you pay it? You probably would. Where'd the kidney really come from? Where did it come from?
Did you investigate at all in organ harvesting?
We did, yeah.
Illegal organs? Like, they do that with prisoners too, right?
Perhaps the ones we found were telling us that they were doing it with immigrants, which is very sad. Immigrants that were trying to come during the journey to make it to the U.S. And so the most desperate and vulnerable people, most people don't probably think that this is coming from vulnerable, poor immigrants.
They probably don't want to know.
No.
I see, even as a former CIA officer who participated in some interrogations, they do things to children that I would not even do to my worst enemy. I had a case 15 years ago, maybe 16 years ago. 2 men abducted a child, a 1-year-old baby, sexually abused a 1-year-old baby, sexually a 1-year-old, and then decided to bake the baby and eat the baby. So one of the worst cases I ever got. Who thinks of that? Who thinks of that? That's evil. And then people are like, that doesn't happen. Yes, it does happen. If for all those people that don't believe it happens, get with one HSI agent that studies the dark web and watches sexual abuse of children all day long. To the point that at the end of 30 days, 15 or 30 days, they got to go see a psychologist because of what they have to view, and that's their job, because they're trying to find something in the rooms that can say where this happened to this kid, and so they can try to go save the kid. But there's thousands. There's thousands, and we're not saving them.
The sheriff says one of these guys was looking for a child to eat.
And that was just one of the disturbing things we heard at that press conference today.
A knock on the door. Met by guys in green. 45 people arrested for being child predators, prostitutes, johns, human traffickers, and this.
A gentleman wanted a person brought to him that he could eat, physically cannibalize.
That was Justin Ben Singh, who also, according to this warrant, planned to kidnap a child and make her drink her own pee to get him off.
You want to talk about the depravity of humanity? Look at these people.
People like Assam Batros.
He took an erectile dysfunction pill before he got there. And then he injected himself with testosterone into his genitals.
All while thinking he was meeting a 14-year-old, like many of the people who knocked at this door.
You're good, brother. During the course of the investigation, a lot of people admitted that they knowingly had sexually transmitted diseases, and they were willing to have sex with a 14-year-old.
Tell me what the physical destruction of a girl and a boy that's 3, 5, 10 at the hands of men. What is the physical destruction to their bodies?
In the first place, you're dealing with is a size difference. Every part of their body, it's not the size of an adult's body. Very first thing you're dealing with is fear and trauma. Now they're in the hands of somebody that's totally unfamiliar with them, and they're not at home. They're not anything, there's nothing familiar where they are, so they're scared to death. Now you're dealing with trauma in their body, mental trauma and spiritual trauma. And then the second thing you've got going on, depending on how that child is raped, will determine how their body reacts to it. For example, if a little boy is raped anally, his anal area is just destroyed. It's ripped apart, he's bleeding. If a little girl is penetrated in a vaginal area, it's destroyed. It's just destroyed. There's pain, there's nothing pleasurable about that. I mean, she's ripped apart. Then she's got STDs possibly. And who knows what else they want to do to that kid. Anything that is sexually perversive, and I think the audience can understand what that may be. Even if it's like torturing a child. Can you imagine a 4-year-old girl tied up to a bed and sexually abused in every way that you can think of and tortured by 2 or 3 men or 2 or 3 women? Can you imagine that? They've never experienced it. There's nothing sexual. It's just torture. There's no pleasure in it and everything. And they cry and they cry and they cry and they're broken, and they will continue to be broken the rest of their life. And what you've inflicted upon them, that punishment, so to speak, will last them if they last a lifetime. So, but wait, there's some compassion, because the perpetrators, the kidnappers, don't want them to have all that pain. So guess what? They shoot them up with some drugs so they don't feel that pain. But the vaginal area is still torn, or the anal area of the little boy or the little girl is still ripped apart. they're not going to take them to a hospital. Why? Because somebody at the hospitals will ask. So what happens after that? Does it heal? No. Does it get infected? Yes, it probably gets infected. And in the midst of that, if you have some pervert decides to think it's kind of fun to slap a 3-year-old around, then now you've got a broken jaw, or you've got teeth that are falling out, or their hair's been pulled out. Torture. It's literally torture. It's not in the adult world. You know, if you got two adults together and they're engaged in some kind of sexual activity, it's not the same. It's not the same at all. It's not sexual at all. It's just torture. And they say, well, maybe it's a 16-year-old. Well, all right, let's take a 16-year-old girl. 16-year-old girl gets a train run on her. She's in a hotel room. She's got 40 clients in one night. What do you think happens to her body? Do you think they stop when she says stop? When she says, please stop? Think she doesn't have physical damage? Of course she does. Think some pervert wants to insert something in her body that's going to tear her apart? Of course they do. You think she's going to get STDs? I don't know. You got 40 clients. Somebody's not clean. What if she gets HIV? Does the pimp take her to the hospital? No. No, he doesn't take her to the hospital either. Literally, we're torturing them and not providing them any hope to ever live beyond that. And those that I've talked to that are adults that have been trafficked, they've always asked me this. I had this 2 days ago, actually. Where were you when I was being trafficked? And it breaks my heart every single time. I tell them if I'd have known, we would have come and gotten you. I have a good friend of mine, Annie Lobert. She has an organization out in Vegas called Hookers for Jesus. And she's a great gal, her and her husband. And she asked me the same question. Where were you when I was being trafficked? And, you know, if we knew, we'd give 100% to go do it. Because the signs are there, but people don't want to educate themselves to know that, wait a minute, that's odd over there. That looks like that girl's being trafficked, or that little boy's being trafficked, or why is that guy, you know, talking to that little kid?
So for me, the one red line that I do have in life is anybody that messes around with a child. That's it. That's my red line in life.
We have the House of Representatives right now is totally, completely broken. And they're totally owned by the corporate lobbyists and frankly by the globalists who own many of these people because they've been compromised by some of these, what they call Codell trips overseas, where these members of both the House and the Senate get compromised by sleeping with children. And they compromise. And these are real things. These are very real things.
I believe they are all compromised. I believe that's why Hillary Clinton didn't go to jail, because the dominoes begin to fall.
I would agree.
However, so I'm looking at a gentleman like Mr. Flynn, who I have great respect for.
Sure.
Why is he not naming names? I want to know.
That's a good question.
It's bothered me. The moment I saw him say that, I paused my computer while I was live and I went back and went, was I paying attention right? What did he say? And I watched again and I waited for the podcaster that's sitting right over in that chair, and she said nothing. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wait a minute, whoa. This is a major omission. There has to be some follow-up. So please tell me, because I want to know. Why wouldn't General Flynn tell the people who are the senators that are raping children?
Can't speak for Mike, but I can say this. Sometimes it's not a matter of telling who it's doing it. It's the timing of when you tell. For example, I can tell you something, but if I'm in a position of authority to do something about it, no one's going to listen to it again. So again, I can't speak for Mike Flynn, but I do know enough about him to know he's very strategic. I do know enough about what I do with children, and I'm right on board with you. I think they should be exposed, but I'll go a step further. It's never going to change until this happens. When bad things happen to bad people, justice prevails, okay? So you know what I think about anybody who rapes a child? You know what I think the penalty is? It's a death penalty. Across the board. Years ago when President Trump was in office, I went and saw a good friend of mine, Katie Sullivan. She worked under Attorney General Barr, and we had this discussion. And I said, Katie, this is what ARC is going to push for across America, because until the penalty is stiff enough, people are going to keep doing it. They're going to keep doing it. And she said, well, what do you think that penalty is? And I said, it's the death penalty. Because every pedophile that I have ever interviewed in prison, every child rapist, I've asked them all the same question. What's the one thing that might have deterred you from raping that 4-year-old girl in the garage, as an example? And every single one over the course of 10 years said, well, if I thought I was going to get the death penalty, I probably wouldn't have done it. But I'm going to get 7 and I'll be out in 3. Or I'm going to get an education. Or, you know, my life outside in the streets sucked. So I like the prison world. I get taken care of. You pay for my education. You pay for my food. You give me a place to live. Yeah, it's a life of crime. But guess what? I don't have to worry about doing what you do. Guess what? You pay taxes. You work your ass off. And so thank you very much. So I've come to realize that when bad things happen to bad people, that's called accountability. Things start to shift. Now, there's another part of this formula also. When you've got congressmen and you've got organizations like the LGBTQXYZ, whatever they want to be, and I'm not pointing the finger at all gay people, it's not what I'm saying, but that organization itself is pushing an agenda for minor attracted people. They're shifting the name so it's more palatable.
We should accept that pedophiles are people who have not chosen their sexuality and who, unlike most of us, will never be able to live it out freely if they want to lead an upright life. We should accept that pedophilia is a sexual preference, a thought, a feeling, and not an act. We should differentiate between child sexual abuse and pedophilia.
No, it's a pedophile. It's a child rapist. That's what child sex trafficking is. Someone pays somebody to have their way with a child and rape them. And most people never get it, JJ, because they don't really understand what it really looks like. And I'll tell you what it looks like. It's the 7-year-old girl or the 7-year-old boy that's chained to the floor in a closet with cigarette burns all over their body, that's not fed in days, but yet raped 15 times a day by male and female predators, with so many STDs and trauma that'll last them a lifetime. That's what child sex trafficking is. That's child rape. A lot of people don't care because it's not in their backyard. But as it grows exponentially, as you and I were talking about, it's gonna be in their backyard.
Here in downtown LA today, law enforcement officials detailing their collective crackdown on human trafficking, saying it exists in its ugliest form right here in our own backyard, with one victim as young as 11 years old.
These sex traffickers will recruit victims from foster care, from group homes, recruiting them and grooming them to engage in prostitution. 84 victims, I'll say children, were rescued from human trafficking.
And if you got grass in your backyard got to be cut, it's your responsibility to cut it. So when it comes to senators and congressmen, many of them have immunity. There's some immunity there for some things. And so they have great attorneys, they are all on the payroll, they're all poking kids maybe, and they're not going to turn each other in. For them, maybe it's not about I'm in it to make money. It's because I want to satisfy my perverted sexual needs, so we're gonna do that. But that's the answer in America. You saw Governor DeSantis, child rape law, and they went a step further, a grooming law that they're putting in place, which is brilliant. Now, when I was in Washington, I was talking to Katie. Katie said, if you can get one state to pass a death penalty, we believe we could push it until it became federal law. That's where we need to be. But ask yourself this, seems like the right thing to do. Why would anybody in Congress try not to do that?
Because they're pedophiles.
That's right, because they're pedophiles. And if they get caught, they're going to get the death penalty.
So let me just make sure I'm very clear. You believe that there is a significant percentage of our political leaders that indulge in pedophilia?
I believe there is, and I believe our political leaders know who they are.
I want you to tell me if I'm right or wrong on this statement. The United States of America government is the world's largest child sex trafficking organization in modern history.
Yes.
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 You didn't even hesitate.
No.
Why?
Because this has NGO structure, this has government structure, this has way too much lube in the machine to be working way too efficiently with gangs, like part of the process, and they're not shooting at each other. So it's like, okay, something's going on there.
Before
coming to HHS ORR and being a detailee for them and working these cases, that is something I knew nothing about and never wanted to know anything about. But sadly, that is the reality of what's happening.
It doesn't have to happen here, and yet it does. People that are in positions of power cannot give me an answer as to why. It's not a priority for them. Why? Is it not a priority because they have too many other things to do? Children are the future of our country. They are the next Americans. Why would they not be the top priority? It's a good question, and they can't answer it either.
Because they're complicit.
I believe because many are complicit, not everybody. There are some senators and congressmen that are really great and they're fighting an uphill battle and they are doing a lot to try and stop that the best way they can.
And I have seen the evidence of kids being reused to create a family unit. Same kid over and over again.
I want to show a quick photo. I myself took this photo. That little girl that you see was acting terrified, not of the agents, not of myself, but of the man holding her. This man with a DNA test, he confessed that he actually was not her father, that he had rented her. This is a process called recycling. This man who you just saw on the screen, who, by the way, was a convicted sex offender.
It's not 90% going to parents anymore. It's a third or less going to parents in today's statistics and numbers.
It is stunning to me, stunning, to hear you say that the prior administration reunited children with their parents.
Oh, I see.
When
So
in
this
fact,
is their fault?
So
but you're not going to take any responsibility for the indentured servitude and exploitation of children that is happening on your watch. A moment ago, you were crowing about the fact that you treated children so well, and yet we find tens of thousands of children who are forced to work as slaves because of your policies, and you turn around and blame a prior administration. Mr. Secretary, this is par for the course for you. You do it every time you appear before this committee. You do it every time you appear before Congress. I, for one, am sick and tired of it, and thousands of children are in physical danger. Danger.
Now listen to this number because you have to understand what it means. 325,000 children have been lost. They've been allowed to be trafficked all across our borders. Think of the number. 325,000 children are missing. Many are dead. Many are involved in sex operations. Many are working as slaves in different parts of probably this country and probably many others.
America, the journey that we have just taken you on has proven without a shadow of a doubt that the Biden administration has committed treason. Now, the only question I have for you is, what are you going to do about it?
Are you ready to stand for justice and all the values that define our nation? On our website, thististreason.com, we have a petition for the implementation of the death penalty for child rape in all 50 states. We are on a mission to gather 10 million signatures from American patriots just like you and deliver them to President Donald J. Trump. Let's send a message to the pedophiles in Washington, D.C. Demand that the federal government ensures the death penalty is implemented across all 50 states for any adult over the age of 21 who rapes a minor child who's under the age of 17. Make your voices heard. Your signature on this petition will be a direct message to President Donald Trump, advocating for decisive action. The time to act is now, America. Your signature could be the one that tips the scale. Join us, make a difference, and let's show our commitment to upholding the law. Sign the petition today at thisistreason.com.
All right, Joe, you watch my 6. Lord, I pray for the nation. Lord, I pray for wisdom sought as wisdom fully gained, the wisdom to discern your will. Lord, I pray for the strength to achieve steadfast obedience, for the spirit that God gave us does not make us timid, but it gives us power, love, and self-discipline. Lord, lead us past those false prophets devoid of your spirit, and lead us directly under your authorities. Lord, for the nation, I beseech you humbly that our nation can learn to walk like, talk like, live like, love like Jesus. Now I must pray for our enemies, those abused who have become abusers. I pray they find their way to you. Forgive them and heal them, for they know not what they do. But Lord, be it unto us, Lord, according to your will and your word. And I add a pouring out of your Holy Spirit upon this republic and her patriots for a hedge of protection to those things that are poison darts to the most noblest of your warriors. It's in Christ Jesus' holy name, the name above all names, I pray. Amen.
Okay, let me check something here. All right, let me share screen again. And I just want to summarize a few things here. That was an excellent documentary on trafficking, human trafficking, and it's one of the best that I've seen. That's why I'm showing it here for educational purposes. The documentary was Next Level Productions with Ryan Matta and J.J. Carrell. Okay, and let's see. What is Treason Trafficked? It was released on September 13th. And then What is Treason Invasion was released on 10/24. And then Operation Amber Alert. We looked at that in the last video. We are God's Army and we're coming to save you. Human Trafficking Documentary released on 11/25/2024. So every day, 250 children are lost. Child sex trafficking, organ harvesting, adrenochrome making, and satanic ritual sacrifice. And then the book Invaded by J.J. Carrell. The U.S. government is the largest child sex trafficking organization in modern history. So what are you going to do about it? Okay, let me check something real quick here. Let me see. All right, I'm looking for something here. Okay, let me check this out. Okay, there it is. All right. So let me stop that. Sorry about that. Okay, then let me go back to Zoom real quick and hit share one more time. Okay, so I forgot one T in Matta, so sorry about that. That is my mistake. All right, so hopefully you can see that, and then let me put it here as well. All right, sometimes I don't see mistakes until after I do it, but basically I saw Ryan Matta on David Nino Rodriguez interview, and I've seen J.J. Carrell before on interviews, but I think they have, an excellent series of documentaries. So I've seen them all. But What is Treason Traffic, I think is really good because, it relates to human trafficking. And that's really what, Insights 21, we look a lot at, child abuse, human trafficking, and then things related to human trafficking, like organ harvesting, MK Ultra mind control that Kathy O'Brien talks about in her movie trance.org or trance.movie. And then also satanic ritual abuse, adrenochrome harvesting. So, you can go deeper and deeper, but there's, if you look at human trafficking, there's probably 50 to 100 things related to it, are puzzle pieces, like Laura Worley says. So I think it's important to look at, the main issue, which is human trafficking or modern slavery, and then look at all the other issues related to it. So, for example, in What is Treason and #Invasion, that was released about a month later, so around Halloween 10/24/24, and that looks at how our country's been the border's been open to make money off human trafficking and intentionally flood it with immigrants, and they call that the Cloward pivot strategy. Okay, so you could look that up, and that's happened in Europe and other places, but it's intentional way to take a country down, because you flood the country with immigrants, and then through open borders, and then it overwhelms their systems, their hospitals, their schools, and you basically bankrupt them. You know, and it also changes the culture, it changes the society. So that's happened in other places, and it also brings in criminals. So there's an increase in rapes of women and children, and all kinds of murders and all kinds of bad things. And then Operation Amber Alert was the human trafficking documentary released on 11/25/2024. Okay, so this is treason.com, and then I did have the name right here, Ryan Matta with two T's, Ryan Matta Media at gmail.com. And then the book Invaded by J.J. Carrell. Okay, so let me stop sharing. I'll show you that book again. Okay, so Invaded. So hopefully you can see that by J.J. Carrell. Okay, so the intentional destruction of the American immigration system. Our nation faces a crisis created by both political parties that is left to continue, as it will destroy America from within. There is no greater threat to our republic than the invasion of millions of foreigners who do not share our language, culture, our shared values, our beliefs. So that's a 2023 book. Within the first 2 years in office, President Biden and his administration have intentionally destroyed the American immigration system. So I think what you're going to see, you know, when Trump comes back in about a month here in January, is you're going to see basically the reversal of what Biden did, you know, and you're going to see him finish the wall, I believe. You're going to see, you know, the slowing down. Open borders promotes human trafficking. So if you close the borders, or if you have border security, then it lessens that by a lot. Okay, so that's kind of what a lot of these are documentaries are about, and I think they're very good. So thank you for doing them. And you know, I'm an educator, and my main purpose is awareness, education, and advocacy. So I think the more people that know about these topics, the more awareness there is, the more service and advocacy there can be. Okay, so have a good day, and thank you for your attention. And check out my website, insights21.com. Okay, so that is behind me, insights21.com. And the Insights 21 podcast, question and research everything. Thank you, and have a good day.